Hey guys, it's kind of a funny thing. Man, I talk to somebody almost daily that, as I begin to talk to them about what I do and the type of people that I work with, eh, I come across somebody, like I said, almost daily who like really hones in because it touches them. It starts to pull on their heartstrings and they're like, hey, wait a minute, that's me. And I mean, that's not surprising. We all know that. Stress is rampant in American culture. But the challenge I find that I have when I'm trying to express this with people is so many people are like, "What is it? What do you call it?" And like for years, I would tell them the technical terms for the different strategies that I implement, and of course they just look at me and blink because they're totally unfamiliar with that terminology. And so it's a challenge for me because, you know what I mean? They want to know what it is. And I think it's because we're consumer minded. Most of us, when we're having needs or challenges, want to, try something to fix it. The challenge with this is if you're having regular uncomfortable symptoms from an overactive or inflamed, stress response, then it's already on overdrive. It's already too much, if you will. That being said, it's the 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 condition or symptom or illness, whatever you want to call it. I don't like those words, but it inherently is a comprehensive problem. It's spilling over into multiple aspects of life. That's because it's not just, whatever, a brain problem. It's not just heart, liver, kidney, gut, whatever, not just a mind issue, right? The activation of the fight or flight sympathetic response is a multi-system response, and as such, the symptoms are multi-system. So it only stands to reason that, and I think we know this, honestly. I think, what I mean, in our hearts, we know that if it's a comprehensive problem, it's going to require a comprehensive solution. And that's, I guess, what I'm describing when I say I have trouble articulating to people exactly what this is. This is a solution, and that's how I always try to speak from the outcome, from the solution. If you have, overactivated fight or flight, chronic stress response, then this rewires that so that it's not a problem. Um, like I said, since we all know comprehensive problem requires a comprehensive solution, there's my difficulty in articulating what this is. For 10 years, I didn't have a solution. I had this host of symptoms, and I went to multiple medical doctors, holistic doctors, holistic practitioners, I should say. Um, hundreds of tests and literally, definitely tens of thousands of dollars in expense on, tests and supplements. And the good practitioners had lots of clues, but what I noticed is everybody, and it's not malicious at all, but everybody is a little trapped within the range of what they were taught, or the way they were taught it, or the whys behind their theory of practice, right? And so, though some people were able to give me help in certain symptoms, because this was a multi-symptom issue that requires, like I said, a comprehensive solution, I wasn't finding the relief that I needed. It was just little bits here and there. I'm unaware of any book or program or solution out there that approaches the stress response, which has hundreds, if not thousands, of tests validating. Like, people say it all the time, stress kills. We all know that. Everybody like inherently knows it's true. All medical doctors know it's true. Like I said, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of tests that literally prove that it's true, and how and why it's true, right? We know the actual mechanics of what happens when your brain perceives external stimulus or input that it discerns as negative or stressful. And we've documented the entire response that happens after that. So none of that's new. But what's so confounding and amazing to me is I'm not seeing any treatments that address that. And yet I'm seeing, the more I do this, the more research I see. I mean, I don't have exact statistics, but it's close to 80% of everybody's symptoms, no matter what their condition is, no matter what's wrong with them, all the symptoms are related to the stress response. So I'm not saying in every occasion that if you just shut down the stress response, then you fix the condition. But what I am suggesting is you can have a relief of symptoms regardless of the condition if you just shut down the stress response. But in many cases, that's the only thing going on. A lot of people are just stressed. And because we tend to think as consumers, and our medical system is designed to diagnose a particular condition and then treat or drug based on that specific condition. When you have something like stress response, which is a multiple system, multiple symptom, situation for you to be in, there's no one specific diagnosis, so there's no one specific drug or treatment, right? And so you find yourself, you're in limbo because you don't know what to do. Doctors' hands are tied because they're only allowed to diagnose or recommend within their field of study, right? So herein is the challenge. And if you're listening to me, clearly you're experiencing some of the same issues that I went through with this challenge. Here's the brutal irony of it all. Rewiring the stress response is actually a quite simple proposition. Now, it's not easy because it is a comprehensive approach. But if you lay the pieces, you lay a foundation in order the way the body works. And, the way I discovered this was acknowledging that we are mental, physical, and spiritual beings, and that all three of those areas have to be nourished and have to be exercised. Then the entire human condition can't help but improve. And in that way, it is very simple. Now, it's not always easy. Like I said, it is a comprehensive approach. But I just want to encourage you guys with that. So a lot of people ask me, what do you do? I can't put a name to it because it's not a thing. It's a series of things. And I honestly have never seen any of these all put together. The challenge, one of the challenges I've seen is even with different modes of healing, they have different names for it. The stress response I've heard called vagal tone. I've heard it called autonomic nervous system dysfunction. I've heard it called enteric mind dysfunction, limbic system dysfunction, sympathetic activation, fight or flight. All those are different names for the same thing, the same system in the body, the same functions, the same disruptions. It just depends on, what your background is, what type of treating, what type of modalities, what type of theories, what part of the world. It's Indian Ayurvedic or Chinese, ancient Chinese herbal acupuncture type stuff. Or modern Western medicine. They all acknowledge, they all have lots of studies, they all address these same issues, they just have different names for it. And if you can get past your ego of wanting to be right or having to evangelize and like, no, this works, and just open your mind and your heart to the idea that there's more than one modality that helps, there's more than one modality that works, right? And that's, I think, if we'll, my heart is just to be well, to be healthy. And I think if you're listening to me, I'm sure that's all you want too. It's just to be healthy. I learned a long time ago, it's very difficult to be both right and happy. People who, really dig in, and this is a challenge with people with lots of background and education. They become totally convinced that they're right. And for some reason in doing so, there's a need for everything or everybody else to be wrong. And I don't think healing modalities are mutually exclusive. Let's take the best from different practices. But yeah, anyway, I hope that's helpful because, like I said, one of the biggest challenges I have when I talk to people, and I encounter someone almost every day that needs and wants my help. And the biggest challenge I have is, in a sentence or a few words, telling them what I do. And I think most people want that, like I said, because we're consumers. You go, in most of these support groups, excuse me, that I'm in, the first thing people say when they say hi, thanks for letting me in the group, and then they say, I have this and I have this and I was diagnosed with this and this, right? My experience is having a word for it, a diagnosis for it, is seldom very helpful. Now, it may be helpful from an immediate medical standpoint, as in we can prescribe this drug for it, but none of the people who make it to me are success stories with that type of approach, or they wouldn't be talking to me, right? I deal with people who fall between the cracks in that type of a system. So when it comes to rewiring the stress response, I don't need to know what your diagnosis is. Honestly, I don't care what your diagnosis is. It doesn't matter what your diagnosis is. Time and time again, we've seen when the brain is functioning at the frequencies it's supposed to function at, it's resting when it's supposed to be resting, it's communicating where it's supposed to be communicating, right? When it does that, all the symptoms go away, regardless of what your actual condition is. Because even though everybody's trauma is unique, the patterns and responses in the brain and central nervous system are not. They are not unique. They're the same for everybody. So if your trauma was a divorce, if your trauma was the death of a child, if your trauma was, a pathological infection, virus, bacteria, mold, heavy metal, it doesn't matter, because activating the stress response is the biologically natural response that all humans share. And that's the work that we do here. Huge difference between managing the symptoms and not having the symptoms in the first place. Everything else that I've seen out there talking about stress teaches you how to manage the symptoms of stress. If you go to the brain where that response is triggered in the first place, right? And you teach it that that type of activity isn't dangerous, right? And you create new neural pathways, then your brain suddenly isn't triggering the stress response all the time. Because the brain is what triggered it all in the first place. So much better than managing or mitigating the symptoms of stress is not having the stress response triggered in the first place. There's nothing to manage. Hope that's encouraged. I'll talk to you guys soon.